Hello? Ah, now it's there. My God, I tested this before stream. Hey, you can hear me now, Brendan? Here, I'll go to you. Brendan's there. Brendan? Is he there? Hello? I got Adam again. All right. I think last week I did this too. I added Brandon before we went live, and then it wasn't working when I came to him. I forget. Now I got Adam again. Hey.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, all right. So I did my whole talk, yeah. I even did this before stream. I'm like, okay, I set everything up. I did a start recording in OBS just to make sure, and I was like, oh, okay, it's recording. I hear myself, and then I start up, and my stupid voice meter banana removed my microphone, so it wasn't connected anymore. And anyways, I guess I gotta remember to check that before going live. So as I was saying, this is the Great Work Launchpad. 43, Shadow Work 41, Fear of Love 26, Fear of Sacrifice 4, subtitle Running from Responsibility. I'm going to get into that. Also did a little thing on the Great Work, getting people launched in. You can come if you're knowledgeable on a topic and you want to add your voice to the choir, get more familiar with how it works to go on a live platform, create content. If you're apprehensive or insecure, you need to build up confidence. Well, this is a place you can come on, say something for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, and then so that's open for anyone who wants to come and have a hand, have their try at getting involved in this and see how they do. All right. Let's get on with it. So last week, I think we ended somewhere around walking the walk and not just talking the talk. That phrase that I had trouble finding, and Brandon even used it in his presentation in Funnel 5, as I recall. You mentioned that walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So we ended talking about that kind of. I don't exactly remember. We talked about the truth movement and how they say they want freedom but don't actually do what's required. More references to Ma'at and light. So talking about morality, I think that's more where we ended on. And when we tell people what freedom is and how it's related to morality, and this is why it's important to talk about morality. Because if you understand the law of freedom, which most people don't, but it's something that you can understand and verify yourself, that all our behavior is what creates the world we have, and it's the type of behavior that's going to create the type of world that we have. And the type of world that we're referencing here is the type of world that is representative of more or less freedom, more or less enslavement. And that is all based on the type of behavior, which is moral behavior or immoral behavior. And as more morality, you get more freedom. As there's more immorality, you get less freedom, which is correlated with more enslavement. So we can tell people that what freedom is the absence of enslavement. I've talked about this, and Brandon has, and many people have. And then what is required to restore that condition of freedom, of true freedom, and to preserve it. And the preservation is involved with self-defense and fighting back those who would initiate violence, initiate immorality, and countering their behavior to not let it stand. But to restore it in the first place, that is also might be required. But the thing you certainly need, as is demonstrated by the failure of all revolutions, is moral education. And when you try to explain people, this, took maybe 3 minutes to get to the gist of it. And of course, it doesn't explain the underlying why and the whole validation as to why this is true. We're just giving the conclusion of how this works. But you can tell people that, and some people can accept it, but some people, they don't. They're essentially going to tell you to go screw yourself, fuck off. They're not interested. They're going to ignore it. Go away, go do your thing. Yeah, have fun with that. And they're going to go do their thing. Because they'll do anything to avoid taking up that responsibility of moral education, of investing your time and attention, effort, and dedication and persistence of your will to reapply it. And, the content creation is a vast array of forms of media, and it can be very basic in terms of you point a phone at your face and you just click record. So even that can just be something where you're going to explain it, but people still don't want to do that. And there's a lot of people online who are popular just doing these basic, well, I guess maybe they're on TikTok, and if that's your measure of popularity, I don't know if how valuable it is. But that aside, not going into that too much. People want to avoid taking up the responsibility. Hence the infographic that I made, Running from Responsibility, where you have the proverbial atlas holding up the weight of the world, and everyone else is just walking by. And I'll go to that image so people can see it more. And they got suitcases and they're all dressed up because they're going to work, because that's what they're busy most of the day. They just want to go to work. So they're busy going to work, and they're like, wow, that's a big load you got there. I'm not going to help you with that. No. You're good. You can just keep holding that up. Bear that responsibility. But I'm too busy with my life, my personal life, the things that I want to do for me right now, in the short term. Not the long term for me, but the short term for me. And certainly not future generations. I'm just focused on myself and what I can get out of life while I'm alive. So you got to work, got to get a good job, get a good pay so you can buy the house and the cars and go on the vacations several times a year and just enjoy life, because that's what it's all about, right? Just enjoy life. And how many people have that as a credo, as a motto, as a slogan for the purpose of life? That's the purpose for them. The purpose and the meaning of life is based in pleasure and comfort and enjoyment and having fun. Not that you can't have pleasure and enjoyment and having fun and joy and comfort, but that's what they focus on. They do the grind so they can have free time to lay back and go on a vacation, enjoy a beer, or watch a game, or whatever the hell people do. It's all about the sacrifice of the toil in order to reap the comfort when they're not doing that toil. And that's what they live for, the greater comforts and the greater, whatever, I forget the saying, the finer things of life. Yes, that's it, the finer things as it's referred to. So they don't want to hear about how their own actions are not in alignment with the requirements for what they say they want, which is freedom. So even the people who toil, and they view it as a toil and it's a grind, and they just don't want to do that because they're working for the weekend. There's that song, Everybody's Working for the Weekend. It's a rock song. I forget who it's by, but everybody's just working for the weekend because that's what you're doing. You're working in the week because you're looking forward to that weekend. Shit, Monday's here, and yay, Friday's here. Thank God it's Friday. So people, they want that freedom of being able to do what they want. And that's like the limitation of their scope of freedom, of how they view freedom. It's just being able to do, what I want, but within the restrictions of those who impose their will upon the rest of us to restrict what we can do and say, you're not allowed to do this, even though in natural law and according to morality, you are allowed to do it. And this thing, which is against morality, well, you must do it. So they make us do things that are immoral and prevent us from doing things that we have a moral right to do. So they use their wills and they're restricting us. But within that bubble that we're allowed to do things, people are just focused on, well, within this bubble that I'm allowed, this limitation of my freedom. Well, that's what I'm working for. And they're not looking at how to make that bubble bigger, how to get rid of that bubble and just make it, well, now I have my freedom. I'm not constrained and put into a box and into a bubble to make my choices and my behaviors limited, as opposed to the nearly unlimited amount of things that we can do when we are not being restricted and constricted and confined in our behaviors. So they say they want freedom, but the requirements to get the freedom, their behavior is not in alignment with it, and they're not even interested in learning about it. They don't want to change their behavior to get in alignment. And we can reference Ma'at again, alignment. And Brandon had an image of Ma'at with a ruler. So you want to draw a line. Helps if you have a ruler or something straight edge, so a ruler, and you measure how far you want to measure your line. So a ruler is useful for that. And when you want to align with something, or you're going to be in parallel, and you're going to get closer to it, towards that line, to get in congruence, in equilibrium, in balance with it. So most people just want their selfish lives to live, is what it comes down to. And I like it in the What on Earth is Happening 258. Mark repeats this 3 times straight. Most people just want their selfish lives to live. Most people want their selfish lives to live. And I think he says, you just want your selfish fucking life, or something like that. Anyways, it's impactful and it's good, because that's what it comes down to. And we're talking about, what is this selfishness? Well, that's egotism. Well, that's what the Satanism is. It's all about me, I. And control. When you get at the higher perverse level, it's about controlling others. So about you and your will being imposed on the will of others, and people get off on this. This is the real power trip. It's like money is just a means to that. And it's everywhere in society. It's in politics and in media and all businesses, and in religion. It's in Hollywood. It's in everywhere. There's people in power who want to control and prevent you from doing certain things, or coercing you or influencing you into doing things that they want you to do, that they want to happen. And it says that's the dynamic we're talking about here, of fear, of this polarity of stagnation and involution and chaos, where the egotism is taken to greater and greater depths of negative application. And this selfishness at this basic level is where, like the mindset, this is a lot for people who might not understand it, but the Satanism isn't as most people understand. That's why it's more akin to egotism, and they give us the mindset of their more extremely perverse selfishness. They want people to accept that way, the dog eat dog, the social Darwinism, so that you accept that way of life and that you join in it and you want it. And having people be focused on themselves and what they can get out of life for themselves, and climbing the social ladder, climbing the corporate ladder, or whatever, that all feeds into this negative polarity of serving the force of fear, as opposed to the opposite, which would be serving the force of love, agape, true care, which would look for ways to not only benefit yourself, but all of humanity. You're going to invest some of your time, you're going to sacrifice part of your life in order to try to achieve that. And that's what the great work is about, from a true causal factor level. And a lot of people have that intention, but they're still misguided, and they don't have an accurate understanding of how they're going to achieve the ends that they envision they want to achieve, of creating good in the world and having peace, because they don't understand all these things that we've been talking about in this series, and many other people talk about, which is the knowledge of objective morality, because the government's not going anywhere until people are more moral. The whole reason government exists, the whole reason authority exists, is because people aren't moral and they want this authority to exist to take care of things, to take care of injustices or take care of certain services. So people just want their selfish lives to live, and they don't want to get involved because they don't want to sacrifice the things they selfishly want for themselves. And you can't solve the problem of human slavery by just focusing on living a selfish life, which is what most people want. They want to work, working for the weekend, working for the vacation, save up money, go on trips, go to this, go to that, go to the show, go to the concert, go to the movie. Their kids are involved in extracurricular activities, go around and all those things. Take time off, go on the vacation, sit down, watch TV, read a book. But none of this is getting them to the point where they're going to sacrifice any of those things for the goal of actually being able to live in true freedom. And once again, they don't even understand this. So you can't apply yourself to create a goal that you don't even understand is a goal, or what its definition is, or how to achieve it. And that's why we got to talk about these things so that people can understand it. And the more people talk about it, the more people can understand it. And then maybe we can get this goal eventually in the human future at some point. So people just want to focus on what's in it for them in the life that they live now. What's in it for me, and not invest in learning what is needed to do the great work, or what's needed to actually get freedom for themselves or for their children or for their future descendants. It's all just what they can get out of life while they're here, and that's it. That's their lower selfish focus that continues to serve that force of fear and stagnation and chaos, because there's other people pushing things down that way. And when you just focus on yourself, you're just going along with the system of control, as long as you can eke out whatever they allow you to in that bubble, in that box of freedom that they've constrained for you. And you're accustomed to that level because that's what you're born into. And as long as you can maintain that, then you're happy. And that's why COVID was changing that formula, where the negativity was popping up more, the control was popping up more, people were being more controlled, and that's not what they were accustomed to. They didn't like it, so they protested and they revolted and they complained and did their marches and all these things. And then when things went back more or less to normal, then they all went back to sleep in the coffin. All right, I'll pass it to you, Brandon.
Great points. You mentioned about investing in a long goal. You know, you have responsibility. Then we are given, um, representation, and it's like people put more, fixation and representation to be represented, by someone else, to be represented in the now, by somebody else. But nobody else can ever represent you in the now, because they can never, truly be accountable. They can never really be truly, responsible. And no one's is going to be there 24/7, for your own, individual needs. So, you know, if you really want to invest in, the true long term goal, then we have to learn about true, have responsibility, and get away from this idea of representation, by someone else. That's this mommy or daddy, figure that's going to come save us it's just never going to happen. And we have, so many years of evidence, of that. But it gets into, how, like been bringing up over the past few weeks, the deeper psychological root, of this abandonment, and how, we want to be represented by mommy and daddy because we don't want to, you know, be responsible in the now. and learn to live with our own behaviors and learn to, discover those truer parts about ourselves so we can learn to take that level of responsibility, you know. Um, so we have to be the change that we want the world to see. We have to be that change that we want the world to be in the present day now. And that's what, we talked about earlier is walking the walk and talking the talk. It's because in your daily interactions, you aren't just investing these ideas that we are talking about, but you're actually, incorporating them into your actual, relationships to where you're not bringing on violence, you're not bringing on coercion, and you are living by an example, and people can learn from your behaviors, and use that as a beacon for them to learn um hell about their own behaviors. So that's what it means by walking the walk and talking the talk. And if you actually want to bring about freedom, then you actually have to help materialize this stuff in the real world and not just talk about the ideas. It's like you actually have to be aligned yourself. So taking true responsibility and getting away from this brainwash, her representation, from a mommy or daddy or authority figure or her religious figure. Yeah, the fear of sacrifice, and just let it all go, because there's nothing really to fear at the end of the day, because at the end of the day it's all going to be all right, because it's all boiling down to our choices, to our choices.
Yeah, and you can still have fear. It's more about in spite of, not necessarily overcoming all fears.
Yeah,
You can
because
overcome some of them, but like you can still have fear of like, oh, are they gonna come get me someday or something? And but in spite of that fear, you're going to be like, well, even if they do, so what? I'm still
right,
gonna
yeah.
speak up and try to do the right thing to try to change this condition. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So we're talking about people being selfish, people not wanting this responsibility and avoiding it, and even some of us who do start, and like Brendan's saying, um, you overcome your fears, or in spite of them, you get involved and you start and you can make content, um, or you can help someone who's doing content, or help someone who's got like an operation going, like Passio, and you can help with recording or like processing, post processing, and post production. I mean, and even before I got started, that's how I did. There was someone who had a podcast. Um, wasn't well known, but I helped make some graphics and things like that. So you can get started behind the scenes before you develop that confidence to actually like put your name on things and get things out in either your own voice, or when you're writing, it's in your name, or I guess you could even use a pseudonym if you're that afraid. So even there, even though you're afraid of something, in spite of the fear, yes, you're not going to use your name, but you're still going to put something out, and you can use a pseudonym, whatever. The point that it gets out there, but then, you're still acting from a place of cowardice because you're afraid of even using your own name. So then eventually you can build up the courage to overcome that fear and then start using your own name and put your name out there and say, I'm not going to be afraid of you, controllers and whatnot. And I'm going to use my name, and here I am in creation. Here's my voice, whether it's in writing or literally a voice, a vocal voice with the vibration frequencies that we can hear. Writing is still your voice. But people can get started, and I see a lot of it, and we've talked about it here, I think at least twice, where they get stuck on novelty, on the new thing. And we've talked about how there's two parts to it. One is that it's like chasing that attention. You want to focus on whatever new is happening, the flavor of the week, the flavor of evil of the week. Makes for easier content to make because it's always something that like the subject matter is there, and then you just have to talk about it. You just have to know about it and talk about it. And it's also what people are interested in because people are fixated on this novelty and the dopamine from new things. It's hardwired into our basic psychology is the being attracted to new things, new information, new stimulus. So people are attracted to these new flavors of BS that come out in the world from governments and whoever, wherever. And people are interested in that. So then they find content that is related to that new thing that's happening. So that's why a lot of people who do create content are stuck on this novelty train, the novelty bandwagon, because it is what people will pay more attention to. And you want that attention. So if you want people to pay attention to your content, then you're going to target the things that they are interested in. So then you make it more about the novelty, and that's what I refer to as the Great Work Level 1, which is the effects, the problems, the symptoms, and that's fine to talk about. You got to know about the problem before you can care at all about a solution. You can present someone with a solution, they won't understand the meaning and purpose and why it's important at all if they don't understand the problem that the solution will solve. So you got to know the problem. So Great Work Level 1, fine to do, but it's the easy way of talking about the symptoms and the effects because they're always there. You got availability of new content to talk about, and it's just what people are more interested in. So this is the novelty train, and it'll get you more views, more likes, more attention, and that feeds into your own dopamine and your own ego of having attention. We crave attention, being recognized, being seen by others. But the reality of the situation is that to restore or create true freedom, to end slavery or evil, is that it's mostly about repeating the same information. And that is these eternal truths that don't change. So it's not a flavor of the week that's going to keep coming up with this happened here and this happened here, and every week you got something new to talk about because there's always this stuff talking about, always this new stuff happening, and that's what people are chasing is all the new stuff. And so these eternal truths don't change. Well, that's boring. They don't change. Oh, you're not talking about anything new. Why am I going to pay attention to you? Go away. I'm going to go, flavor of the week. Oh, this person's talking about this bullshit that happened. And so that's what they're interested in. Like, oh, well, I've already heard this before. Oh, you've heard it before? Oh, really? Well, congratulations, you've heard it before. Well, what are you doing with it? Are you taking it to the next level, or are you just like, oh, I've heard that before. Next. I want the next thing that I haven't heard before. I just want that thing. Well, these eternal truths, the moral truth, the definitive knowledge of the objective difference between right and wrong, that is what people need to learn. And it doesn't change. That is immutable. And it is fundamental. It is eternal. And so a lot of people get stuck on just trying to find new things to talk about, new things to capture people's attention, and they don't actually have their eye on the target. The target is how the law of freedom operates. In order to get the ends that you say you want, moral knowledge needs to be acquired and understood and lived by more and more people. So if you're not talking about it, are you really targeting that center of the target to get what you say you want? No, you're not really doing that. And I've talked about it before. There are peripherals, like the Great Work Level 1. You need to know the problem before you can care about a solution or understand why a solution is valid. The Great Work Level 2 is the why. the causal factors, the solutions. And this isn't just moral truth. It's all this stuff we've been talking about in the Great Work Launchpad, the shadow work. Many other people talk about this. But this is getting at the self-knowledge, the internal domain that reflects outward as the external domain, the external reality that ends up being created on this planet or in the universe. It's all based on what's inside of our consciousness that then leaks out through our behavior, and that's the world that we create. So this is how it is. This is the reality according to law, according to the law of freedom, that the condition that you want to get requires moral knowledge, requires conscience to be developed. And that moral knowledge needs to be propagated. So that propagation needs to occur. And yes, there's a lot of things, the psychology, the philosophy related to it, the shadow work. That's super important because a lot of shit people are stuck in. They're calcified in their ego, and they need to work on themselves to break out of the limiting fear factors, for instance, all these excuses for not getting involved. So they need to do work on themselves. They need to do work on themselves to understand these truths and not just deny them, reject them, avoid them, ignore them. So there's a lot of shadow work, internal work that needs to be done. And understanding these processes and these things that you can be rejecting and these dynamics of the polarity of fear or love, well, it goes towards getting people to serve more that force of love, that agape, that true care. So moral knowledge needs to be propagated, it needs to be repeated. And this task of repeating things is nothing new. It's nothing new. These are eternal truths. I've talked about them, Brandon's talked about them. Many people have talked about them. But that's what people who get started, maybe they talked about them once, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they started and they're like, I'm going to try to talk about truths that relate to the system of control, but I'm going to try to find something that this person over here didn't talk about. Mark Passio didn't talk about this, so I'm going to talk about it. Oh, Mark Passio talked about it? Well, I'm not going to talk about it because Mark Passio already talked about it. This is the trap. This is the bullshit hole. I don't know how else to describe it. This pigeonhole that people have this narrow view, and it's like, oh, this new thing over here that I got to talk about. Oh, all these things that are nothing new and that have been talked about. Well, I don't need to talk about that. I'm just going to try to find, I'm here with my telescope, and I'm going to find this new thing. Where's this new thing that I can talk about that's so important? So you're pigeonholed into like trying to find these things that you can talk about. Get out of that pigeonhole of novelty, of trying to find something new. And think of it more of, you got to be a repeater, and that there is nothing new in terms of the highly important, most important thing for people to know, which is moral truth, the knowledge of objective morality. That is what is most important. So I'm not saying the other things aren't important. I'm saying what is most important, because it's all based on the law of freedom. And once you understand that, you'll understand that moral knowledge needs to be acquired by the majority of people. So that is what is objectively the most important. It's not a personal evaluation of mine or of Brandon or whoever wants to agree with this. This is an objective understanding of what is the most important information for people to acquire and for people who are creating content to put out. Because if this is not done and you're focusing on the novelty and the new thing and trying to get attention, trying to get likes, trying to build your audience or whatever, build your following, well, all of that stuff you're talking about, how is it getting people closer to understanding, accepting, and living in moral truth? Something you gotta ask yourself. Maybe that's some shadow work you gotta do on yourself to realize how you're fixated on novelty and the dopamine and the psychological desire to have attention brought to you, and how it's not actually serving the goal that you're trying to serve in the end. So we have to, this repeating task is of repeating things that are not new, and the people who are just going to complain, like the person that I banned in the chat once who was like, oh, you're just repeating what Mark Passio said. And yeah, okay, great. Well, congratulations on being such a damn genius on figuring that out. Because Mark Passio repeated it too. Maybe he learned it from other people, from books and videos, whatever, we don't know. And he's repeating it. What if Mark didn't repeat any of this? Where would we be?
Yeah.
Yeah? Where would we be? Where would any of us be? Well, I know I wouldn't be here. My level of consciousness wouldn't be here. Brandon wouldn't be at where he is. All of us, so many of us wouldn't be where we are. So Mark Passio wasn't like, oh, well, I read, someone already talked about this. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to find something else to talk about. So the goal isn't to find something new. Maybe you can say it in a new way. Yeah, it's not about the new info or new novelty and what people are chasing. You're trying to come up with something that someone you've went through their content and, well, they've talked about it, so I don't need to talk about it. That's the wrong way to look at this. What's new will be your creation, though, of content that didn't exist prior. Until you created it, it didn't exist. What you created is something new that came into existence. Now, you're not creating the eternal truth. You're not making a new eternal truth. Because other people probably have already spoken about it or written it or created content about it. But what you are doing is creating something new that didn't previously exist, and you're contributing to that voice of truth, that choir of truth, to help expand and propel truth into existence so they can potentially reach more people and create that change that we want to see happen. So you can't focus on trying to find new info, this pigeonhole telescope, looking everywhere for this and finding new people to talk about things. I'm not saying you can't do that, but that shouldn't be the focus. You have to focus on repeating the highest quality eternal truth of moral truth. And, maybe that is more boring to you. Maybe that's more boring for the people who already watch your content, and, well, so be it. But if you haven't done that, then yes, you can be involved in the great work, and you can still be talking about other causal factors or the effects and the symptoms and the problems, and you can be contributing in some aspect, and that's great to be contributing in some aspect. But I keep coming back to the fundamental root causal factor of why we are in the condition we are in and how we are going to get out of it. And that's all based in the understanding of the law of freedom. And with that understanding, if you really understand it, then you know that the propagation of moral truth is of fundamental importance. That talk about your other things, but then tie it back into morality, or every few months, do a refresher and talk about it, or how far deep into morality have you talked about? And that was my goal. Like, hey, I'm going to create Natural Law, the Science of Morality presentations, and I'm going to go super deep into it. I'm going to explain it really well, and it'll be like, yes, it can be long, but it's shorter than listening to 400 hours of Mark Passio to find everywhere he talks about it, to understand it fully. And I'd still recommend, even if you listen to my stuff, yes, start from podcast 1 of Mark Passio and go all the way through, because he's going to talk about certain things in his own way and bring up other topics, and it's all very valuable information. So that remains the most important responsibility for everyone, is the propagation of moral truth, of objective morality, of natural law, because that's the only way we're going to get to the true freedom that we want. That's the goal of the great work, is to end enslavement, end evil, to restore true freedom. And that can only happen one way, one singular way, one way, no other way. And that's for people to be moral. And that requires them to have moral knowledge. And that requires everyone else who does have moral knowledge to propagate it so that they can acquire that moral knowledge. It's all purely logical. Anyone can verify this truth. This is just the way it works. This is the reality. And if you're going to fight against it, then you're fighting against the way reality functions. So this is the most important responsibility. So we're bringing it back to responsibility. And, I'm going to be that guy. The people doing the great work in some capacity need to ask themselves, are they running from this responsibility of being a repeater and talking about things that someone else already talked about? Because as I've said before, I'm doing that. All of this Great Work Launchpad is all based around what Mark Passio has talked about. And yes, I have interjected some different things that he hasn't talked about and tied it into other things and corresponded information and bring new things to light. So it might be new for you here, but it might not be new for you over here. So you shouldn't focus on what's new for people. You should talk about the quality of the information and getting that out. So this is the most important responsibility for everyone, and this is why it's the one great work. And I've mentioned that before. I think it was in the Great Work Launchpad, or it might have been my Natural Law series on the Law of Freedom. I don't remember. But the one great work is one great work because it's for everyone, and it's all about this common, our birthright. We all have the same birthright of our natural law rights, our natural rights, and how they're being infringed and violated. And that's that common responsibility that is for everyone. It's the one great work for everyone to do. Where you're going to be repeating what others have said or have spoken about this topic. Like, that's what I do. I'm repeating. Oh yeah. Anyone who's gone through Mark Passio's work doesn't need to go through most of what I say. So like I said, there's some new things, some new correspondences that Mark Passio hasn't talked about, but maybe people who've gone through that do need to hear it in a different way, because they have to ask themselves, well, are they activated yet? The funnel conference this year and last year, it was all about inspiring care to action, igniting hearts and minds. It's all about getting active. So people who have heard Mark Passio's word, well, are you active? How are you involved? So maybe you do need to hear it from more people. Maybe you do need to hear it from me and other people who are already talking about this, to reemphasize the point that you forgot as you kept going along with your life and how you want to live it and what you want to get out of it. And then you forgot about what Mark Passio said and how it was true. And it resonated with you, and then on to the next thing you went, and you forgot about, or you didn't understand this responsibility, or you forgot about it, and then you didn't activate yourself into taking on that burden of responsibility. So maybe you can find new things to talk about, but that's not the focus. Like, I have found new things to talk about in my morality presentation, 8-hour presentation. I have brought in new dynamics to understanding morality, but that wasn't the main focus. The main focus was getting as much as I could about morality, and then through compiling that work, I thought of different things and I brought new light to the subject. So if no one repeats moral truth, natural law, how are people going to understand it? They won't. And I mentioned that before about Mark Passio. Imagine Mark Passio never talked about natural law because others already had, and he learned it from them. So he was like, I learned it from them. No, they already talked about it. Well, I don't need to talk about it. Where would most of us be? We wouldn't be at our level of consciousness. Repeating the knowledge of objective morality, natural law, is what is required. It is a must. And if you want to focus on what's popular, being liked, making a name for yourself, find something new that others haven't talked about yet, then you don't really get it. You don't really get the goal and how to achieve it. You don't get the requirements. I'll pass it to you, Brandon.
I think this is why, philosophy died because it's so boring. You're just having to say the same things, over and over. It's been said for thousands of years, and all the cool kids want all the new, 'cause they want the new. They want that new news. But that's,
Yeah.
one of the main reasons why people, they want that newness because they have been conditioned, by most media to, crave that new story, that new sensation, that new fixation on that new news, that new piece of information, that new piece of technology. And it's done some magical wonders for our species. But yeah, you know, that new news ain't never gonna be the good. But yeah, just being how those repeaters and just saying the stuff that people don't want to hear, just saying, this universal truth, just saying it over and over and over and over and over, because it's in that means a repetition, that you make and finally have that seed sprout out and grow. And that's why we need more repeaters, more people using their voices to repeat the same, for information so it can be, largely heard because the lie is being repeated over and over. Well, what if we took that same tool and use it for, how the message of truth, how the message of morality, the message of natural law? Then how will we see, change spring into this world? So, yeah, yeah, we have to be her repeaters and, constantly keep, hammering this message and going back to this message because, you know, this childish mentality, it's always looking for things dangled in front of his face. It's always looking for, the fruit, have the catchy tune, the shit that's in glitz and glamour to kind of, pull people off the path, pull people hell astray. And it's in that, this simple repeating of the truth that we can, get our focus back, hell, get back aligned. And that's really what how this is all about is just repeating the same truths, the same truths. It's like once we have that mantra in the back of our head, it's just always hammering, hey, stay on course, stay on that straight line, that moral path, that fair and square path, that straight line, be fair, be moral, be right, do the right thing and seek the truth. And until there are more voices, then there's not much going to change because that takes the level of responsibility. But yeah, hell, great points. Hell, you're always killing it, man.
Thanks. Yeah, the what you open with philosophy's boring. Yeah, there you go. People are chasing that. I forget how you phrased it. The hot stuff. What did you say?
People are chasing the new news.
No, before
Yeah.
that, you said philosophy's boring, and then you said something like as the what
Oh,
people want instead.
oh, hell, the cool kids are always
Not the cool
chasing.
kids. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How the cool kids are always chasing, how the hot stuff, how they want to be flashy, they want to be funky, they want to be trendy. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. And when you said that, I immediately thought of, and this is why Passio is like, um, it was less apparent earlier on, but even then he was like, there's always the possibility, but it's not looking very hopeful. And then as the years went by, that message was more powerful and adamant in his broadcasts. But this is why he's like, and this is why, you know, in the last ones, humans are trash apes and all this stuff, because this is it right here. Is
Yeah.
This is the philosophy that people need to understand, and it's just too boring for them because they're trash apes. They they're not interested. It's like this is what's going to free you. It's going to lead to your freedom. They're not interested because they just want to chase. They want to be cool kids chasing that hot stuff, like you say. And yeah, that's what made me think of like that's why we're fucked. That's why humanity is doomed because eternal truths are boring and give me anything but that. I'm not interested. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a sad state of affairs, a sad reflection on the current condition of what humanity is. That's why it's so important for the youth. I said that once in like I don't remember where. Maybe it was in like the first few episodes here or somewhere else that I was like doing on a round table. It's about the children. The future is for the children, and it's by them. They'll become adults and creating the world that we have. And that's where I think the hope lies, is in properly raising children and having them be less abandoned, more raised in consciousness, and having more potential to affect the world in terms of continuing the work, but not engaging in the negative part by failing to be raised properly and then getting out of it, but to not be in it in the first place, and then hopefully understanding this responsibility and continuing it.
Yeah.
Because what I talked about then was that, people can learn this, and then they have to work on themselves. They have to do all the shadow work, and they have to work on themselves for years, and then get to the point of creating the content. But if this is just taught from a young age, then you don't have all that work to do, and they already know it.
Way easier.
Yeah.
Way easier.
Rather than be conditioned into bullshit, they'd be conditioned into truth, and then they'd be on the right path, like you said, on the right line. And that's where I think the hope we have is in more people morally educating the young and taking up the responsibility, wanting this responsibility, wanting the burden, because inside of them that true care has been ignited, and they want selfishly for themselves to be free and not be enslaved because they understand the current condition, but also for others. So they're going to be driven, they have that care ignited within them, and they're going to be driven to take on that burden of responsibility. Not that they're like, hey, just load that rock right on my shoulders, I want it. But that you want it because you want to serve that force of love, of good, of morality, of truth. And that's why we take on this responsibility, not because we want to carry that weight, but because we want to, we're driven by that force to serve it. And as a result, I almost want to say we gladly take on the responsibility. And it's not like we're all happy about it or anything, but we take it on because it is a necessity, and we have a moral obligation to do it. So we do take it upon ourselves. And it's not glad. We don't really want to be doing this. And like I said, if everyone was morally educated this way from the outset, and people were actually raising their children, there wouldn't be need for any of this work. There wouldn't be me or anyone else creating this content, because it would just be the common sense of society. It would be common sense, and you wouldn't need people creating content about it. Because the parents would already be educating their children about it. And if they had schools or private schools or tutors or whatever to teach them how to do certain things in life and whatever, that would be part of the curriculum too, of how do you become an adult? Well, you need this philosophy of morality and of freedom. And we wouldn't have this burden. The burden wouldn't be on this one atlas representing us, or like the few hundred or 1,000 of us. The burden would be spread out to the whole planet, and it would be everyone helping to raise everyone up in consciousness. So the burden wouldn't even be a heavy burden. It would just be like having a speck of dust on your shoulder instead, or something, like a little pebble. It wouldn't be a big rock in terms of the burden. So it would be a very light burden that you wouldn't even notice, because it would already be the de facto way that society would operate, would be to talk about these things and instill them in the young, So there would be like no burden anymore. It would just be part of how you raise children and how you
Yep.
educate them. And that's the goal, right? That's what we're trying to get to.
And that was reminding me because when you look at, like we're still part of the animal kingdom, and when you look at the other animals in the kingdom, they give their use this timeless wisdom so they can survive and thrive and evolve. It's like don't go down and just play by the water, because you need to be, conscious because, there are creatures that will come out of the water and then, that will get you, timeless wisdom, in the animal kingdom. But for some reason, our species doesn't, teach our youth, this timeless truth, that's needed to evolve, that's needed to thrive and, needed for ethics to, have reign supreme. you know Hell, in fact, we just teach our youth to go down and play by that river, so the predators can just easily get you. So it's way ass backwards, the way we're doing things and not teaching our youth, this very important information because they're not going to be successful at all, without this, free information. And it's just, more blind idiots, growing up and going out into the, into the world and playing down by that, hell water, and unbeknownst to them, there's predators there, and they're just playing.
Yeah. Um, Damn. I thought of something, and then it jumped out of my mind and ran away.
You got to start writing them down.
Yeah. Well, I did write down the philosophy boring, and then
Yeah,
something the hot stuff, and then I couldn't remember the cool kids part. That was a good
yeah,
one.
dude. The philosophy boring thing is like people like this is so true because we have the same amount of time as what they did, like back then. But we rather do it, with cars and sports and not sitting there thinking. And oh man,
Yeah. These truths are, and there was a thing I was thinking of this week. I was thinking of like making it into content, but I think it would be short. It would require a lot more research, but you'd be good at it too. Is how the I was thinking of like how the occult is all around us, and I was thinking of how the suppressed information, the suppressed knowledge, that's how it relates to what you're talking about. These this ancient wisdom, as I think you just referred to it. The This wisdom is all around us, and not in terms of like it's in books and on the internet. It's in the idioms and the phrases we use in our own language. Specifically, I'm talking about ma'at, right? This ancient wisdom from all the way back then that they developed symbolism for, and then like the English alphabet comes from ancient Egypt. I'm pretty convinced of that, and all the sayings get transferred, like into like Coptic and then Greek, and then the Romans adopted a lot of the Greek stuff and Latin, and then we come from there. We come from the Latin and the Greek. Um, so there's so many things with like straight as an arrow, right? Or what's an arrow made of? Well, you got a feather on it, the mat's feather, and you're straight. The straight is the measurement, the ruler, and the balance. You got to be straight as an arrow. What does that mean to be straight as an arrow? Well, that's to be an honest person, to have integrity. So that there's one phrase that we use to be straight as an arrow. Where does that come from? Well, this is the occult teachings. This is the ancient wisdom that's all around us. And there's like so many of these phrases. I'm sure you can think of more. And I was just thinking how that would be an interesting idea of like the occult is all around us, and like explaining it like it's not
yeah,
even just like in this content here or this area here in this book in this video. It's like literally in the phrases that
phrases we
you
use.
learn
Yeah,
from in basics of language, that this ancient wisdom is there, but just people don't realize it.
yeah, yeah. It really is, and hell, the language is such a big tool. It's like once I started to look at that it was like more lights were starting to connect, more light bulbs were going off. And yeah, the languages, how the language has always been fascinating,
Yeah.
and the
So
phrases and and all that wordplay. But yeah,
if you think of more, just write them down. Right, make a page or something of like, if it pops into your head at some point, hey, here's another idiom, and then we could
yeah,
do something of like a show just about this, or make a video or whatever of like
yeah,
all these, how the the occult is all around us in our language without us even realizing it. I'm sure there's more than just straight as an arrow,
yeah,
and like a crooked person. Well, it's crooked. It's not straight, and you're crooked. Well, you're an immoral person, so it's like it's all it's all around us, and people just don't realize it. And yeah, I think it'd
yeah.
be an interesting topic to delve into if we can find a lot of them.
The one thing I always, like would think about with bent, because you have like an arrow
Oh,
just
you're
coming back.
bent. That's the same as
Yeah,
crooked. Yeah.
yep, yep. And yeah, like you would think that the karmic debt eventually is going to come back around, like towards you, for doing the wrong thing. Cause that's like one way I've always kind of looked at it too. But yeah,
Cool. Well, we'll end it there. Hope someone out there gains some value from this content and can propel you towards action or bring more clarity on the subject if you're already acting. We'll see you next week. I guess that'll be in March, next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Thank you for your time and attention. Take care.